So tonight we have a good meeting. We have Darrell Little, who's going to be presenting on the Jupyter Notebooks, Jupyter Notebooks, and how to use those with Python programming and for all kinds of cool stuff. For those of you who don't know Darrell, I'm surprised. If you live in Roanoke and you are any sort of nerd, you probably need to know Darrell. If you don't, he runs the Note Codes. He does the Linux Users Group. He does amateur radio. He does a plethora of other things. He was the one that was instrumental in getting us to capture the flag not too long ago when we did that. So he has great relationships with Virginia Tech and also with Virginia Western. So Darrell is the guy to know if you're a nerd or a geek in Roanoke. In fact, I think, 2 years ago, he got Geek of the Year award from the RBTC. Is that right, Darrell?
That's right. I was Geek of the Year, yeah.
So that doesn't come easy. So I guess that kind of tells you where we are. So Darrell has lots of experience. He's also a co-worker. We work together here at Corellian. In fact, he's upstairs right now, and I'm downstairs because he gets the cool office while I get my office. But anyway, so with that, I will turn it over to Darrell. You're on mute, Darrell.
Yeah, just panning the office there. It's like the whiteboard is clean right now. That means I'm ready to start a new project. So anyway, all right. So So if we're ready to get started, I'll share my screen here, and all right. So this will be kind of an interactive workshop. So we have the two worksheets that Rob mailed out, and this is a Jupyter Hub. It's an online Jupyter Notebook server. Right now, I have it set up. You can create your own username and password, and it'll create yourself an account. Remember the password because I can't change it or retrieve it. But if you forget it, you can always create another account.
So you want us to go to classroom.notecodes.org?
Yeah. So if you would like to follow along, go to classroom.notecodes.org and create a username and password. And don't hack me, please. Okay, but I will close it down so it won't let just people just wander in. But if you want to keep the account and use it to learn and tinker with, that's perfectly fine. But when you do create an account and you get on, it'll look like this. You're going to have a shared data folder, and I've got and there are the two handouts right there. So if you didn't get it from the email, you can download it. And there's some sample data. The second handout is about how to connect to a data source. So I have a file there with some data to tinker around with, and I've got a Jupyter notebook. So that IPYNB extension is a Jupyter notebook extension. If you click on that, it'll open up the notebook, and that's this example is what I'm going to end with. So
hang on just 1 second, Darrell. So we have one new person. So if you just want to go, just for those that are just joined us, go to Classroom in your web browser. If you want to go to classroom.notecodes.org, then create your username and password. So just put in a username and password, that'll be yours. And then under that, you'll see a shared data once you get in. And there's two documents there, Introduction to Jupyter Notebooks and also the Jupyter Notebook Connect data source PDF. Those are the PDFs you can use to walk through the session tonight. So I just want to make sure everybody's aware of what's going on. I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Oh, no, that's fine. That's fine. And so I'm just going to do just a really quick, just following along this worksheet, just a real quick introduction for, but basically it's a way to have like interactive programming in what they call a notebook. Python is just one of the languages that you can run in Jupyter Notebook. And that's what I happen to have configured. This site is set up to run Python, but this is what it looks like when you log in. You create your new account. All you're going to have is just that shared data folder, and then over here on the right, where under New, you can create a new notebook. You can create a text file, create a folder. You want to create a folder to start uploading your data files to your notebook. Or you can create a terminal, and that basically gives you access to the terminal command line. And if anybody wants to follow along, we'll just go over some just really simple Python stuff just to get the ball rolling. But Python space -- version, that will return what version of Python that's running in your environment. So we're on Python 3.6. Those that are familiar with Python, Python 2.7 has now officially been deprecated, and they really like for everyone to develop in Python 3.6 or higher now. If you type just Python, you come to a Python command line called the REPL, which is the REPL stands for read, evaluate, print, and loop. And of course, everyone's got to do their hello world, so their first Python program. So you can just start typing at the Python command line and start doing some real low-level programming that way, especially like if you're testing out some code and you want to see what happens. But I'm just showing that as in comparison, because what it's going to look like when you're in a notebook. So when you're in a notebook, you're going to be able to put your Python code in and execute it inside of a notebook, which gives you a way to format your code and format your results so that you can share it and view it. To get out of the REPL, it's just going to be exit and parentheses gets me back to the command line, and I can exit out of that. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new Python notebook. And so you go to that under new and select under notebook, a new notebook. It'll open up a new window. You can give your notebook a name, and you're just presented with these cells. And these cells can be code, they can be, and you can put some heading don't know why it keeps doing that. Stop doing that to me. There we go. So that's just some markdown, and if you click run, it will execute that markdown code that you just put in that cell, and you go into your next cell. Oh, well, why did it not like that? Oh, anyway, okay. There we go. Like that. Okay, there we go. So then if you make the cell a code cell, then when you click the run button, it will execute that code. And click the run button, and it runs the code. So in that demo sheet is for anyone who wants to tinker around with this later, and want to create a notebook, and that code is to create a simple calculator in a notebook, and then when you run it, you'll have a little text-based calculator. But I won't spend a lot of time. That's in the handout for anybody who wants to play around with that later. And on the second handbook, or the second handout, is how to use data, to access data in Jupyter Notebooks, and to manipulate the data and to display the data. So on that second handout, there's a little more information. But Pandas is a library that you can use. So once you import the Pandas library, you can run these commands. And if I click the run button, it told me that the Pandas version that I'm running is the 0.25.2. So it's what the handout, if you follow along, is you're creating data frames to import data and manipulate it. So again, I won't go into a lot of time with that. That again is just another worksheet for those that want to learn how to use Jupyter Notebooks. But the meat of the presentation here was of using Jupyter Notebooks for data science and analyzing data that might be collected while you're doing some cybersecurity activities. And I'll send out the links that we're going to look at here. And some of this is just in just the last couple of years. It's been some people that have been exploring using Jupyter Notebooks for cybersecurity. And this is a series of articles. In their first article, just some basic stuff like we were doing now, just getting used to how to put code into Jupyter Notebooks and run code. But he goes into threat hunting and accessing data sets that are open source data sets that are available for you to use. Move this around so I can get to the tabs here a little bit better. But in the example that I'm going to, and also that there's a whole information security Jupyter community, and they have YouTube videos and things that you can access if you want to learn more. But the example I'm going to show is a real simple example based on this article here, where we're accessing some APIs that are publicly available, specifically this DShield API. And there's like all kinds of different APIs that you can access to pull data and look at data for threat analysis and things that you might be interested in doing. So with that, go back to full screen here. And when you're done with the notebook, you can just go close and halt, and that will shut that notebook down. And then you'll see it. Then your notebook that you just created will be there under your file, so you can always go back and open that notebook again once you're done working on it. It'll save it, and you can go back to it and work with it again. But in the shared data folder I've got this this notebook, so you can just click on that and run that notebook. So where I've got some based on that that one article, that this article here, this blog post, it's just a real basic level that demonstrates some of the things that you can do, especially with accessing APIs. So we've got some command here. So and if any, I'll go ahead and run through some of these, and everyone's welcome to do this either as I'm going along or on your own time later. But you click on a cell, you can click the run button. There's also a keyboard shortcut. If you click on a cell and you want to run run the code in that cell, you hold down Control and hit Enter, and it will execute that code. So that's a keyboard shortcut. So ls was the command to list the directory. Another example of running some code, see what version of pip, what version of Python we're running. And so this code here, we're going to use the request module, and we're going to request, and we're going to hit an API and request some data from SANS and look at the data and then act upon something that we find in the data. So this next cell here, you go ahead and run it. But since I've already installed it on the server, you're going to see that it's already been installed, which is fine. But here we're going to go ahead and start. We're going to import requests, and we're going to just do a real simple request where we're just going to see what the IP address of the server is. So if it runs successfully, we'll see what we printed here, what the IP address is of the server. So this request here, this next request, we're going to use the publicly available JSON, or we're going to pull a file from the API. We're going to the top IPs. We're going to pick the top 10. So you can adjust that number there, how many you want the top 100, It's a pretty, it takes a while to return it. So the bigger that number is, the longer you're going to wait. But then the question mark JSON, that's just telling the API that we wanted to return this in JSON format. So I'm going to go ahead and run that line of code. And it does, if you're running this as you're following along, it does take a few minutes for it to return that code. And then we're going to go to the next line, and we're just going to display what gets returned. And we're going to wait. And so while we're waiting for that, return that data, anybody have any questions? Am I going too fast? Speed it up? Or is anybody, taking a nap?
No, me personally, I think this is great. I'm trying to think about the use case, and I'm guessing that, and I'm not a programmer by trade, right? So I'm thinking that the use case would be, there's oftentimes when I'm doing coding and things like that, and I'm getting returns, but then I have to either take those returns and push them off into a text file or whatever. Is the use case here really just to be able to run the code and then capture the returned results in a notebook? Is that the common use case, or what's the most common use case for this?
Usually it's to be able to integrate the code along with some text, with like some explanation of what we're looking at. Like say if I made this the next and this example doesn't really have any markdown included, but I could have, the first one here, I could have I wonder if I can, let's see. Yeah, insert a cell here, and so have some text in markdown format to have like something that explains what it is.
And then these notebooks become shareable to other people.
Right. Then you can save these notebooks and publish them on GitHub, or share them with your coworkers or people that are working with you on a project. And so you've got your text and your code in kind of a format that allows you to easily share it with people.
Gotcha.
I've heard of SOCs actually using this before, where they would actually, in their particular case, they were using a Hadoop backend. They would shove all their data into a Hadoop backend, use Jupyter Notebooks to sort of start working on something. That's probably a little bit more than like more than just a simple search, like just jumping in and saying like I'm going to search for this term, but perhaps I need to correlate across multiple data sources. And they would use the Jupyter Notebook to sort of show here's my proof, here's my process. So when it becomes time to share elsewhere, like if I need to sort of audit myself or have others audit my code to prove what I've done, the Jupyter Notebook becomes sort of that proof. So as you're developing, you're writing a proof saying, here's what I've done, here's how I integrate all the things, which can later turn into a script for alerting and that sort of thing.
Got it. Okay.
Right. And Jupyter Hub is just a way to have an enterprise level server for the people that are working on your team to not have, you don't have to install Jupyter Notebooks on every single laptop. You can just have Jupyter Hub where everyone can work on their Jupyter Notebooks from a central server. And there's more and more Jupyter Notebook based services out there where it's making it easier and easier to share notebooks and work with, collaborate with people using notebooks.
So are Jupyter Notebooks, is it like and again, I apologize. This is going to be a silly
Oh,
question.
no, that's fine.
Is this an application, an open source application being loosely termed there, but that you would install like on a server somewhere, or is it something that's hosted? Well, obviously you've got it running on your NoteCode server, so I'm assuming it's something that you would install and then you can share that way in a central repository, similar to like a
Right.
localized version of a Bitbucket or a GitHub or something like that.
Right, and it can be both. You can install it just on your own machine locally, and then it's an instance of Jupyter Notebook that you are just alone working on. But then you can save your notebook and then share it, and someone else can open up your notebook and see what you've done on their instance, their installation of Jupyter Notebooks. It's just easier if you're collaborating to have it installed on a server like this is with a Jupyter Hub. And then you don't have to maintain, say you're 20 people on your team, you don't have to install Jupyter Notebook 20 times. You just install it on a server. You have a central place where you go to go run your notebooks.
Got it. All right, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to derail you there.
Oh no, that's fine. That's a good question because I'm kind of glossing over some of those kind of details, and just kind of getting to like the meat and potatoes of the demo here. But I like the Jupyter Hub because then when I'm giving demonstrations or teaching a Python programming class like at the library or something, I don't have to spend half of the classroom time getting everyone up and running. We can just go and say, here, go here, and let's work on our notebooks. So I can see where it would come in handy in an enterprise situation as far as supporting multiple users. So, so the last thing in my little API demonstration here that I stole off of that blog post is now I've got the data that's returned from the API call, and so they've given me the top 10 IPs, and I can copy and paste that IP address in. And then this cell here is going to give me some details on that IP address in JSON format so that I can display it and look at it. And then there's some details on IP address that's in the SANS database. And this is just a very tiny example of how to query data or to access data and look at it and then possibly manipulate that data. Like say I wanted to make a nice looking graph or something of the top 10 IP addresses in the SANS database that day, and I could use Jupyter Notebooks to make some graphs, which like I said, this is just a really just a simple example of how it could be used.
So these APIs, this is an open source API, so that you could pull this information and, like you said, create reports or whatever you want to do off of the daily target IPs or whatever. So that's interesting.
Exactly. Right. And this is just what's being made available. Like SANS, they have the APIs that they are making available, the documentation, and it's really up to you to decide what kind of information you're looking for, and they just make it available. Shows you the URL and how to format the URL and what kind of data that they're gonna return. But like another good example, though, say you were doing some you were doing some threat analysis and you were collecting data from some sensors into a database. You use a database connector that's available in Python to connect to your database, and then use Jupyter Notebook to analyze, display some data that you're accumulating from your sensors in that database. And then that notebook would be something that you could share, and people could run the notebook and retrieve and view that data. And then you can pretty this up. You can use these cells to write an explanation and with some instructions on what to do with this notebook.
It's pretty cool. Very cool.
Do you have any examples of graphics, like putting out a bar chart or line graph, pie chart, that sort of thing from data that you pulled in?
Yeah, that probably would have been a good thing for me to do, wouldn't it have?
Sorry to put you on the spot. I'm just curious, like, it's got to render it in a cell, but how does Python handle that? Like, that's the part where I'm kind of curious what that looks like. I'll go down. I have an account, so I'll solve that problem on my own and maybe share my screen.
Yeah. There's so the modules that are available, the matplotlib. You can plot like bar graphs, and there's a module called Seaborn that lets you take the data and manipulate how you want to display it. In that one handout, connecting to data sources, using that CSV file, using this CSV file, you can do some examples, and maybe actually I might have saved a notebook. I can open up and maybe show some examples of that. But did anybody else have any questions about this particular example before I close this? And maybe I'll pull up another notebook with some better looking examples. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close this one down. And I'll go ahead and log out of my my test account here. Let's log into this one. I think I got some better examples saved on this one. Oh gosh. Oh, actually, all right. This is an example of the. This is the code for just to create a calculator. So in that first handout, this is what the code looks like, and then when you run that cell, you actually run that code. So say we're going to add some numbers. 34 and 12. Yeah. So that's a simple text-based calculator. Here's an example of using the matplotlib to plot some data. And then here's one using Seaborn to plot some data from that USA population data file, and shows there's some way that you can.
Can you scroll back up?
Sure.
There's there was a graphic there. That's exactly what I wanted to see. So I just tried copying some matplotlib code to go, and I think that's the It might be that special like decorator matplotlib inline. Might be what I'm looking for. Yeah.
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you, sir.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, it took me a little while to get used to using Matplotlib. It's getting into the weeds a little bit, but if you're going to get into analyzing data and data science with Python, it's one of the first tools you learn to use.
That's a good one.
And then Seaborn is just another module that you can import, and it just kind of makes some nicer looking charts to display your data.
Interesting.
And here I'm just showing just using the date. So the DF stands for data frame. So I've created a data frame. And using the built-in module, the pandas module has a read CSV function in it. So the first thing I'm doing, I'm importing pandas because that's what I'm using to access the data file. And then I'm plotting and then making it look nice with Seaborn. But I'm importing the data from that CSV file into the data file and just showing the first rows and the last rows in that data file. And then I kind of changed some of the column names here to show that you can modify the column names. And then we're plotting using that same data file. We're plotting some of the data on the states that are in that data file. So all that is kind of in that second handout, and the data file is there for you to use if you want and play around with this. So yeah, so there's a slightly better example. See what this notebook looks like. Might be the same thing. Yeah, it's a very simple plotting a scatter point, a scatter graph there. So nothing too exciting there. But anyway, that's the gist of it, and was kind of keeping it and short and sweet, and not because you could really go deep in the weeds with some of this stuff, and really get into connecting to database sources and using APIs that are publicly available to pull data.
That's pretty cool. Well, I appreciate you going over it, Darrell, because I had honestly never heard of a Jupyter notebook prior to us doing this tonight. So now I've got something else to start working on. So thanks for that.
Right. Yeah, and like I said, I'll share those links of some of those articles, and we can distribute that out for people who want to read more and look more into it. There's a lot of good work being done out there that people are starting to use this tool for cybersecurity, data science.
I can see why. Does anybody have any questions for Darrell? You also teach a Linux class, is that right, Darrell?
Well, yeah, we have the Linux users group. We'll probably get that started up again, maybe in February. We kind of took a winter break, and we also have a Python users group. that'll probably start up again in February.
So if you're doing cyber security at all, those are probably two things that you really need to know. So I'll probably be joining those user groups. So anybody else got